And it's like the expression, a watched pot never boils. You're just there thinking, come on, come on, come on. Hello, you gorgeous soldiers and soldierettes. How are you doing? Today I'm going to talk about a bad feeling that I've been having. I've been feeling a little bit guilty, and I'm going to tell you why on the other side. So why should I be feeling guilty? Well, I'm feeling a bit guilty about the message that I've been giving. And I've been giving this message for 6 years, since the emissaries came to me and said, give this message, Gordon, and I went, what message? You've got to be joking. All right then. And the message was encapsulated. We're in the Great Awakening and beautiful things are coming. Okay? It's not that we're in the Great Awakening that I feel guilty, that I've been saying that. I'm over the moon with the fact that we're in the Great Awakening, and never has it been more great and more awakened than it is now. Where I feel guilty is the second part of the message, and beautiful things are coming. The reason I feel guilty is this. I have to tell you about when I was a child. When I was a boy, way back then, I was brought up as a Jehovah's Witness, and the Jehovah's Witnesses had been saying for a long time that the end was coming. I was born into that. That's all I ever heard. Armageddon, the end coming, paradise earth. I lived through the 1975 debacle when they put the date, they actually put a date on it, and they said 1970, very bad, never put a date on things. Now we know, don't make yourself look like a twat. They look like a twat. They said 1975 was the end, it came and it went. Well, you can't believe how disappointed I was. I was not a happy bunny, because, you see, the idea of a Jehovah's Witness is this: they have to live this life that they don't really like. They have to go knocking on doors. I don't know whether they still knock on doors. They just stand on streets now and just do nothing. It's like pathetic compared to what we had to knock on their doors. My skin was broken on my hand. And we hated it. We hated knocking on doors. You know, no Jehovah's Witness worth the salt can put their hand up and go, I really love the preaching work. No. And it was like everybody would talk about the preaching work will come to an end. God's going to close the ark door. Then we're not going to have to preach anymore. Honestly, I was so excited about it. I was so excited about not having to preach anymore that I was happy that at the time 6 billion people were going to. I was over the moon that Armageddon would come, not because I wanted them all to go and be thingied. It's because I wanted to stop having to knock on the bloody doors. So, you know, all of those people, 6 billion people unalived, knocking on doors, for me, it seemed like a no-brainer. That was a fair deal. And of course, I grew up and we're listening, the end is nigh. In fact, I've got a book on the market I wrote years ago called The End is Nigh, and this time we really mean it. Okay? It wasn't coming, but I would say to my dad, when is it coming? And he would say, not long now, son. You know, are we nearly there yet? Not long now, son. He would say, within the next 5 years. And I remember being 8, 9, and he would say, in the next 5 years. And every time I had to ask him, it was always in the next 5 years. When I left when I was 20, I thought I had 5 years to live. It was like this 5-year window, and I had to do everything that I wanted to do that was bad in 5 years. And I did that. I managed it. But then I got to 25 and I thought, well, I'm still alive and it's not here. And so at some point I kind of came to the realization that maybe it was a pile of shit that they'd been telling us. And I was very disappointed. Not disappointed that the end wasn't coming. Disappointed that I'd believed it and had ruined my 20s with excess because I thought I was going to die. So why am I telling you this? Well, I'm telling you this because I know what it's like to live your life waiting for something to happen. What happens when you're waiting is that the period of time in which you find yourself is unsatisfactory. you start becoming very fed up with the status quo, with where you are. You're agitated. You can't settle in. And what I'm aware of is that this is exactly where we are now. In the comments, I read the comments of people saying, I can't last. I make jokes about it. Oh, I would like to go off somewhere else. We are becoming impatient for this to end. And I don't think that is a good thing. For a few reasons. One is that I've got no bloody idea how long this is going to go on for. I don't know. Does it look extreme? Does it look like it's going to get extreme? Yes, but I could be wrong. And the act of being agitated for something to come makes it unbearable. You're not happy in this place when you're waiting for something to happen. Do you know, I don't know if you've ever, I've worked with lots of people who, I remember working with a lady who was going to have a small operation like 2 months ahead in the future. And I was working with her in therapy, and she had to make some very serious changes. And I said, let's make these changes now. And she said, if you don't mind, I'm going to wait 2 months until I've had the operation because I can't concentrate on this. I'm too worried about the operation. This is where we are. We're so worried about this coming. We're so agitated that it's not coming. And when's it going to come? And is it going to be tomorrow? Is it going to be next week? Is it going to be December? That it's taking our focus away from us and from our life. This is how I feel. And hey, I'm in that group as well. I'm not saying I rise above it. And it's like the expression, a watched pot never boils. You're just there thinking, come on, come on, come on. When's it going to come on? That anticipation can be nice. Anticipation's lovely. But what it does, it puts your focus in the wrong place. It takes it away from where you are. I heard a great story about a man who moved to an area where there were lots of dogs barking. And it was just his thing. He didn't like them. But he moved there, and at the beginning, for the first couple of weeks, he couldn't stand it. And just dogs keeping him awake all night. And then suddenly, he relaxed into the fact that he was living there. Well, I'm living here. There's nothing I can do about it. And in that moment, the dogs stopped barking. They didn't, but he didn't hear them. It didn't affect him, the noise. He just didn't hear it. His mind had tuned it out. And then what happened? Well, he then decided to move, and he put his house up for sale. And he said in the moment that he made the decision to move and to put his house up for sale, he heard the dogs again. And for the last few weeks, he was furious about the dogs barking, and he was just waiting to move. He couldn't wait to move. And this is where we are. All we can hear is the dogs barking, and it's taking the joy out of our living. And I'm aware that the messages that I give have some part to play in that. Like, hey, it's coming, and hey, it's going to be this, and it's going to be that. And it's a distraction. But what's the answer? Because I've got to give this message, because people have got to know. And the speaking of the message makes it happen and all of that. But at the same time, what I don't want to do is to make people so unhappy about where they are that all the joy of this existence is taken away. That's not what I'd like to do. So I said to the emissaries, what is the answer? We give the message that, the split's coming and blah, blah, blah. But in the meantime, what? And so the emissary said to me this: all that people need to do is to get busy and to keep busy. And I said, busy in what? And they said, busy in the creation of things, creating things. And they've said this before. If we are made in the image of God, we are creators. And so if we want to feel divine, if we want to feel very happy, what we have to do is create. Because when we are creating, we are being absolutely true to who we are. And so we've got to keep ourselves busy. Standing still and observing what's happening won't help us. Just watching and listening to the dogs barking won't help us. What we've got to do is get on with our life and create and make and have ideas and get stuff ready. We've got to get stuff ready for what's going to come. What's going to come is going to come. There's nothing that we can do to make it happen or to not make it happen. What's coming is coming. It's kind of like, yeah, I know that's being looked after. What do I have to do in the meantime? And so if we get involved in creation, we will start to love our life because we will be like God's, divine. That's the whole purpose of who we are, to be divine. And we've got to enjoy the journey. We did come here to have this journey. So denying the journey doesn't make any sense. Wishing we were out of the journey doesn't make any sense. We came here to have the journey. And it reminds me, I'll finish with a story of a group of people. All the neighbours from one area went on a bus trip. And it was a bus trip that was going to travel through the most beautiful countryside ever imaginable, all the way to the seaside. And so they got on the bus, all of them, and they packed themselves in. But instantly there was an argument about who should sit where. Because there were some seats that were better, the more luxury seats, and they had to decide who it was that warranted sitting in those luxury seats. And so they started arguing, and there was a big argument that went on, and it never stopped. And they travelled through all of the countryside, and all they were doing were arguing amongst themselves. They had all of the curtains closed on the windows because they didn't want anyone to see that they were arguing. And they just argued, and they went through the whole countryside, and they arrived at the beach, and nobody had seen any of the scenery. And they just spent the whole time arguing. And when they got off the bus, they were extremely unhappy, extremely tired, and they weren't happy bunnies. Of course, the beach was lovely, but by then they were left with a bitter taste in their mouth. Far better for them to have the curtains open and to watch the scenery as they went along. And that's what we've got to do. Let's have the curtains open. Let's look at the beautiful things. The dogs that are barking will tune out when you're not interested in hearing them. When you're focused on something else. When you resign yourself to the fact that you chose to be here and you're here because you wanted to. It makes it so much easier to manage. I love you all, and I'll speak to you all soon. Put in the comments if your dogs have stopped barking and what it is that you do to keep yourself focused and creating. What is your creation? What do you like to do? I'd love to know. I'll speak to you all later. Bye-bye.